there anything important on this, Jeff?
No, I don't believe
Okay,
so.
it shouldn't overwrite.
It should be empty.
Okay.
If not,
No, but even still, this thing writes a file, but it doesn't overwrite anything else.
okay, good.
Um,
Yeah, you should be good on that too. You want me to just sit here on the end?
Yeah, get rid of that chair. Actually, Zach's been noting that people look really small on the end, so go about here, bring a mic over, and look at me so you won't be totally sideways.
Hey, brother.
Music is like 15, so very little time. Okay, and then that other one is playing instead of the American Music. And are we rolling? On YouTube and Facebook. Cool.
Talking anti-Semitism.
Okay. Okay, we're on like a little over a minute. Okay, 1 minute. do it. A lot of energy.
Okay, here we go. Welcome to the Peak News. I'm Chaim Goldman, the Watchman. You're listening to us on AM 1460 and FM 101.1. The Answer, part of the Salem Network across Colorado Springs, El Paso County, the Pikes Peak region. Thank you for joining us on Faith and Family Day. We're dealing with a tough topic today, but it's one that just never seems to go away. We might deny that it's here. It's always somewhere else, isn't it? It's never here in our own backyard, but it has been, and it is, and it's undeniable at this point. And of course, I'm talking about anti-Semitism, local anti-Semitism here in the Pikes Peak region. We've had here since the October 7th attacks, 2023, Hamas rallies, pro-Hamas rallies on college campuses. We've seen that. We've had large protests at the Colorado Springs City Council, calling on the City Council to condemn Israel for the war in Gaza. We've seen that. I was there. I was there with my children, quite outnumbered as a Jewish American, there with the Palestinian community mixed in with a lot of college students. And now we've had a terror attack here in the state. Of course, we had one in Washington, D.C. a few weeks back with a couple beautiful people, one not even Jewish, but working with the Israeli embassy, gunned down in Washington, D.C., and now up in Boulder, an attack against elderly Jews who were merely having a meeting, a public meeting to draw attention to the hostage crisis of the hostages still kept in Gaza. Who perpetrated this crime? Well, an Egyptian national, someone who came into the country and then stayed here illegally, was supposedly plotting this for over a year. Couldn't get a gun. We'll talk about that later. But you know what? When people want to cause harm, they can get behind the wheel of a car, or as this person did, make a makeshift flamethrower and some Molotov cocktails. If you want to hurt somebody, in Israel, it's very hard to get a gun, so they stab. If you can't get a decent hunting knife, get a kitchen knife. Anything to kill Jews. Anti-Semitism is the oldest hatred. It's been around from the beginning, but I have to say, and I was watching a video of Barry Weiss, a liberal Jew, formerly of the New York Times, till she got fed up with all the anti-Semitism there, interviewing Jerry Seinfeld, another liberal Jew. I just watched this. And she said, when the Seinfeld show was on, it was really sort of the height of American Judaism in America. And he said, yeah, anti-Semitism was gone. We didn't talk about it. We didn't think it was here. We're just Americans. My family's been here for 125 years. But it's back, and it's back with a vengeance. And we see, someone who hates Jews so much. He says it's not. He said it's not against the Jewish community. It's against Zionists. But we hear that kind of language all the time. He set fire to an 87-year-old Jewish woman. And guess what? Guess where he lived? Off Constitution here in El Paso County, really the Springs, a small, unincorporated part of El Paso County, but in the Springs. Tried to buy a gun at Shields. Here. Is anti-Semitism here in America? Absolutely. Is it here in Colorado? Absolutely. Is it here in our dear Pikes Peak region? Absolutely. What are we going to do about it, folks? What are we going to do about it? I have with me Jordan Baldwin from First Amendment Media, our lead investigative journalist, who, like me, is also Jewish. Jordan, thanks for coming on and helping us tell the story today.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Jordan has experienced himself when he's gone out to cover stories, anti-Semitic threats thrown at him, and people have attacked him. We're also going to have on the show Jeremy Jacobs of Stories of Anti-Semitism, a friend of the show who keeps track of anti-Semitism here in our region. And we're going to be challenging you, whoever you are and in whatever capacity, to not remain silent and to take action, because all that has to happen for evil to prevail is for good men and women to do nothing. And I'll just, representing the Jewish community in our 3,500, 4,000 year history, when we need you the most, you go silent, and the Jewish community is left alone. And we even saw it back on October 7th. Pastors may have mentioned it briefly, politicians may have mentioned it briefly, but what substantially is being done? We can't end this problem unless people's hearts and minds are changed. I'm Chaim Goldman, the Watchman. We're talking about local anti-Semitism here in the Pikes Peak region. You're listening to The Peak, where we say the quiet stuff out loud, and we're doing it again today. We'll be right back.
That was good. That was good. But you're right, the changing hearts and minds.
Listen to this. That's a Salem thing. I decided to put it in instead of Bill Federer today because it was so.
I like that. What,
Okay.
Is that something they just...
No, every day they come out with there's a 1 minute some commentary on news item from a bunch of their top people
Okay.
that we actually have the ability to either read it or play the audio every day.
Interesting.
But I checked out the one today. Okay.
Anti-Semitism.
Can you do a fast read? Do you want to read one of these?
Which one is it?
You can do the city council one.
Sure. Do I have that in front of me?
Yeah, no.
Okay.
It has to be really quick. Like you're reading it like a court reporter reading something back. So do you feel you can do a quick read?
Yeah.
Okay. It's like, the Board of the County Commissioners unequivocally condemns the senseless act of targeted violence that occurred yesterday in Boulder, Colorado. Anti-Semitism has no place in our country. It's like at that, people can tell you're reading and you're doing it quickly. Don't even really pause much, at all between sentences or anything. Okay. So I'll have you read that. So we're going to have to be out of the story by 5 minutes so we have time to read these three statements. So I'll do the mayor, you do that, I'll do county commissioner.
So this is from the Spring City Council. Okay.
Yeah, we're back. We're back. Welcome back to the Peak News. I'm Chaim Goldman, the Watchman. I'm here with investigative reporter Jordan Baldwin, and we are talking about local anti-Semitism in the Pikes Peak region in light of really what's been going on since October 7th when all of this exploded across the United States. We saw it in Colorado Springs, and yet what are we really doing about it? I have to say, when I've gone to certain public officials, pastors, others, they show a concern, but it's not really here, right? This stuff doesn't happen in the Springs, just like we don't have gangs, we don't have sex trafficking, we don't have any of that, right? No, it's all here. And point in fact, this national, international story about the hate crime attack in Boulder, the man who did it, I mean, absolutely, we see him on video and everything, and he admitted to it. Is living here off Constitution in Colorado Springs, went to buy a gun in at Shields. So, just a couple of things. There's a lot to this story. It keeps coming out, but the two big things that really have come out in the past day or so is that he did live in the Springs, that he did try to buy a gun. He wasn't allowed to buy the gun, and it seems that the reason he wasn't allowed was because his visa had expired. If he had had a valid visa, it seems he could have bought the gun, possibly. We don't know why he was denied it. But of course, those who seek to restrict our Second Amendment rights are going to say, look, the gun laws worked. Well, you know what? He went out and made Molotov cocktails. He could have used a car. I mean, we've seen this kind of stuff. If someone wants to do harm, it doesn't cause that person to change just because they can't get a gun. The difference is the good guys don't have a gun. And what could have happened? Denver is a place where you really can't have a gun. And what would happen if someone had actually been there to stop him with a gun? It may have been a much better story. Thankfully, the police showed up quickly. Some of the other things is that he had actually sprayed gasoline on himself. That's why you see him shirtless. He had lit himself on fire, and then I guess he took his shirt off. But it says that he admitted that he had planned on dying in this attack. He says that he wasn't targeting Jews. He was targeting Zionists, which we've heard all of that before. It's really inseparable there. It also says that, let's see, he had a backpack sprayer filled with gasoline. That was the flamethrower that he put together. He stopped on the way up north in order to buy glass bottles, cloth, and gasoline to make Molotov cocktails. When he was throwing the Molotov cocktails, he was yelling, "Free Palestine." He said that he wanted them all to die, that he had to do it, he should do it, he would not forgive himself if he didn't do it, and then afterwards that he would do it again. How many of these people are in the country? How many are in Colorado? Jordan, you and I were up just a little over a month ago, up at the Capitol. You organized an Israel Independence Day rally. We were up there. Praise God. This, I'm really sorry for what happened to the other people, but this type of attack, this man dressed as a gardener in order to get as close to the victims as possible, certainly at the rally, could have happened. What are your feelings now as someone who wants good things for this community and is Jewish?
Yeah, well, I think even as the organizer of that event over the last 2 years, it doesn't help with the fear that was already there. Just this year alone, we did have one particular death threat. I won't get into the specifics of it, but it was a robotic phone call to one of our rabbis. And, in years previous, we had maybe some non-viable threats, but this was one that really put everybody on edge. So now that this has happened, I think that it really plays into the fear that everybody's had and has prevented them from coming out and showing the support they need to show.
And also the Jewish community, of course, I mean, people are scared, and rightfully so. But I want to tell you, because I'm Jewish by birth. I'm born in America. I'm also a dual Israeli citizen. And I lived in Israel for 9 years and was there during the Second Intifada. When you hear Free Palestine, globalize the Intifada, people say, it's just a social movement. It's just a way of supporting the Palestinians. No, what we're seeing is this is a call for violence. And, we've seen it over and over again, even here in Colorado Springs. People say it's just words, but now we're seeing it with the attack in Washington, D.C., now in Boulder, that it's not just that.
Absolutely. And it's all over, really. And we hear about these sleeper cells with, the Muslim extremists from years ago and things like that. But the reality is this ideology has always been around, and now it's spreading like a wildfire, not just within these anti-Palestinian movements or these pro-Palestinian movements, but also this intersectionality we see.
Yeah, and we'll be getting into that a lot more. Even tomorrow, we're doing a show that involves that, as we're into Pride Month now. So I do want to give props to elected officials at least making statements. I spoke to Mayor Yemi about a year and a half ago, after October 7th, and said, what are you going to do? We have anti-Semitism. How are you going to protect the Jewish community? He talked about ways that they were helping more security at the synagogues. But overall, he said to me, this is not a real big concern here. I understand why you're concerned, but it's not a big concern here in the Springs. Well, Mayor Yemi, I would say that it is. Anybody that didn't think it is. But this is a statement that came out after from Mayor Yemi, quote, after the attack in Boulder. I am heartbroken by the horrific attack and violence that struck in the city of Boulder on Sunday. Our hearts, minds, and prayers are with the victims and their families. I was in touch with my friend and colleague, Boulder Mayor Brockett, last night and shared our community's support for the victims, their families, the entire city during this difficult time. There is no place for hate or anti-Semitism in our communities. I'm grateful to law enforcement and first responders for their swift action and continued investigation. The FBI is the lead investigative agency and has identified the suspect was living in El Paso County enclave near Colorado Springs. I'm committed to support our local and federal partners in this investigation. Moves forward. Mayor Yemi, I would call on you to talk about actual policy. What are you doing? What are you doing to support the Jewish community? It shouldn't be a secret because there's a lot of Jewish people in the community and they'd like to know what's going on. Back after October 7th, was very happy to be part of both the Colorado Springs City Council and the county commissioners making official resolutions in support of Israel and against the violence in Israel. Jordan, please quickly read the statement that just came out from the Colorado Springs City Council.
Yeah, so they went on to state, City Council leadership strongly reaffirms its support for the state of Israel and the Jewish people. We stand united in condemning the brutal and senseless terrorist attacks that occurred this past weekend against peaceful protesters who were praying for the release of Israel hostages. We are praying for the 8 victims, men and women ranging in ages from 52 to 88, who suffered serious burn injuries in this horrific act of hate. These individuals were deliberately targeted and set on fire for simply standing in solidarity with the families of the hostages. We are grateful that no lives were lost, and we lift up these victims in prayer as they begin the long road to recovery. This attack could have been prevented. The individuals responsible, Mohammed Solomon, was in the United States illegally since August 2022. Let's be clear, Colorado Springs is not a sanctuary city. We do not and will not shield individuals who are in this country unlawfully or who pose a danger to our residents. We continue to call for the identification and deportation of illegal immigrants who threaten the safety and security of our communities. Our city remains committed to peace, lawful order, and protection of innocent life. We will not stand idly by in the face of terrorism and anti-Semitism. We urge our local and federal partners to take immediate and decisive action to prevent further violence and uphold the rule of law. Lynette Crow-Iverson, City Council President, Brian Risley, City Council President Pro Tem.
Okay, and real quick, as we're almost out of time, statement from the El Paso County Commissioners. The Board of County Commissioners unequivocally condemns the senseless act of targeted violence that occurred yesterday in Boulder. Anti-Semitism has no place in our country, and our support for members of the Jewish faith and the state of Israel remains steadfast. We are keeping all those affected by this tragedy in our thoughts and prayers. We're also extremely troubled by the initial report that the suspect is allegedly in the United States illegally. The further underscores El Paso County's opposition to Colorado's sanctuary laws and policies, which hinder local law enforcement from fully cooperating with our federal partners to keep communities safe, and reinforces our support for President Trump's agenda to deport those who are in the country illegally. You know, our state, they keep affirming supporting this illegality, and now it's turned to violence against our citizens. You're listening to The Peak. We'll be right back.
Great timing on that one. Closeout there.
What?
It's a great timing on that closeout. Sorry about the sound.
Okay.
Silence here.
Good reading.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is the recording.
I'll do a quick intro, but
Okay.
yeah. Okay, thank you, comma. I'm on the air now. I'll reach out to you afterwards. Wayne Williams is good to come on the show.
Oh, nice.
So
That's
start
perfect.
planning a show around him.
Okay. That's perfect.
I mean, where was he at the trial? He's the victim.
I don't
Yeah.
remember if he's on the witness list or not. I can look at
I don't remember hearing anything about that.
I think so. I don't
Okay,
think
so plan a show around Wayne.
Okay. Will do. And then also today when they did the press conference, they did have a local rabbi there that was speaking, and he see if I can. Rabbi Mark.
Hey,
Sullivan.
hey, so you're hearing this? Just heard. We've been asking Wayne Williams, who is the real victim of the attack of the hate crime hoax, and he's agreed to come on the program. So we should most likely have him on here next week.
Yeah, that's going to be a great show.
Yeah. He's a lawyer. He was Secretary of State, City Council. Was he county commissioners too? His wife's currently county commissioners. And he may have lost the election because of that. We don't know. Okay, we're back in 30.
You know, it's funny when Polis did his statement today. I know you played a little bit. He talked about a little bit of light can overcome the darkness. I think that's, and he said, and I pray that we are radiating light. You know, God's, you never know what God's doing.
Welcome back to the Peak News. I'm Chaim Goldman, the Watchman. We're discussing local anti-Semitism in the Pikes Peak region. And earlier today, I caught up with Jeremy Jacobs, co-founder and president of Stories of Anti-Semitism. If you read that, I think she said she didn't because it didn't condemn like Jew. It didn't mention Jewish or something. That might actually the headline might be.
It says because she wanted the attack to be characterized as anti-Zionist.
Not anti-Semitic, so she wouldn't sign it.
Right.
Okay,
So
I
sounds
glanced
like
at
she's
that article.
playing into the rhetoric. Now,
Okay, maybe in the final segment I have to deal with that.
well, it's funny because when they were making statements, they were talking about city council, and that rabbi even said something about the hate speech, especially in our city council, must stop. I haven't been able to find anything, but I'm looking into that. What was this hate speech they're talking about? But now we see this, so this could play into so that there's some anti-Semitic people on the city council. I don't know, allegedly.
or maybe it's being called that because it's this, we're not anti-Jewish, we're anti-Zionist, and that
Right,
that
or
whole-
they're right.
and it might be getting characterized as hate speech, which is, it's First Amendment, it's freedom of speech, but
It was an attack, though. It was an attack on a specific group of people.
well, but even the attacker was saying it wasn't against, it was because they were out, with Israeli flags and they were being Zionist, not because he didn't attack a synagogue or a bunch of Jewish people. So,
Gotcha.
but he did want them all to die and was willing to die for it.
Right. I mean, he wanted him to die, but not as much as some other. It's like, it's all the same.
Welcome back to the Peak News. I'm Chaim Goldman, the Watchman. You're listening to us on AM 1460 and FM 101.1, The Answer. And here at the Peak, we are local citizens reporting on hyper-local stories, and we're supported by local businesses. And so a shout out to all of our sponsors for providing this service to you, and specifically one of our gold sponsors, Altitude Hospitality, which has opened up the Homestead Collective up in Prominent Point by Powers and Briargate, where culinary meets community. Really awesome place. A renewed venture of Mitch Yellen, who has the Pinery and Trainwreck and Dad's Donuts. They have 7 different food establishments in one place. It's a beautiful space. The food is amazing. It's up there on that northeast side of the city, and I recommend that you check it out. The Homestead Collective. It's where the Pinery North used to be, and again, wonderful place. Check it out. So this is Faith and Family Wednesday. And I'm here, Chaim Goldman, and investigative journalist Jordan Baldwin. We are both Jewish. We are Messianic Jews by our faith, but we are Jewish ethnically. And you know what? It didn't matter. During the Holocaust, you could be a Lutheran clergy, a Lutheran pastor. And if you had Jewish heritage, you were still Jewish. You still went to the camps. So this is an ancient hatred. We see it all the time. It's sad. It's tragic, but here's the deal, because I at the dinner table last night, as I mentioned in the previous segment, was having this conversation with my family, with my children, going, I guess this is a conversation German families had in the 1930s. Things are getting really bad, and we have to watch ourselves. And this is when my daughter, who I guess had blocked it out, forgotten about it when we were up at this event that Jordan organized for Israel Independence Day a month or so ago, that while she was walking around the Denver Capitol with an Israeli flag draped around her shoulders, someone rode by on a bike and said to my 15-year-old daughter, "You should kill yourself." And we had other people, use the F word. People walked by yelling, free Palestine, just like this person did during the attacks. So what do we do? What can we do? Well, a lot, because we have a lot more power than the Jews had in Germany or anywhere else. And hopefully people are willing to step up. But we don't know, because really in every generation, when it comes down to it, there are some righteous people who are willing to stand with the Jewish people, but most don't. And the church fails, the government fails, everybody fails at this. And I would challenge us now, while we're still the majority, that we stand up, we support the Jewish community, but we also push back against all this hate. We had a program a couple days ago just on this victimization, and we know all of this propaganda that's going on out of Hamas. Even a false report that Israel gunned down a bunch of people over the weekend getting U.S. aid in Gaza turned out not to be true. But you know what? The AP put it out. Washington Post had it. I saw it on sites here in Colorado Springs. It wasn't true. I read it. I was like, I don't think this is true. Well, it took days, but guess what? It's still out there. And when this builds up over time, globalize the Intifada, that there's a genocide going on in there over, people get angry at what's not actually going on. But in the end, this is Jew hatred, and it's not obviously about limiting guns, because this man had guns limited. So he made Molotov cocktails. People have used cars. People have used machetes, right? So it doesn't matter. Once the hate is there, it doesn't matter. So Jordan, give a little bit about your background and also what you've experienced as you've gone out there in our community to cover news that people have made anti-Semitic slurs at you.
Yeah. So basically, my family is from the Rhine River area of Germany, and my grandmother is a Holocaust camp survivor. A lot of my family was separated during the war. My grandmother ended up marrying an American soldier and moving here, and that's when she had my mother, and now I'm here. So I grew up, hearing a lot from my grandmother, who has passed since. She used to go around to schools and speak. I used to go with her. And she always used to tell me about the rhetoric leading up to everything that happened, and how
Germany,
pre-war,
yeah.
like we talk about the night of broken glass and just
Kristallnacht.
Yeah, just this attitude. And she said, Jordan, it's like people were under a spell. It was spreading like wildfire, this hatred, and it didn't even make any sense. And I feel like that's a lot of what we're seeing today, is this hatred, this spreading like wildfire. A spirit. Yeah, it's evil. So that's my history. And, I grew up learning a lot about that. So as this has played out, as I got older, it really has hit home with me. And, it kind of hits home with me even more when people try to disassociate my ethnicity from the beliefs of my people. And, there's Zionism, and then there's the Jewish people. But, especially with Eastern European Jews, it really does all play in to one thing, and it has nothing to do with these rhetoric-driven statements they make about quote-unquote Zionists.
By the way, one of the reasons that the modern Zionist movement happened, of going back to Israel, wasn't just this spiritual call of 2,000 years and going back to our ancestral lands, but because things were really bad in Europe. Those of us here in America, my family that came over around 1900, I'm sure it had something to do with the pogroms that were going on. So, and there were attacks and murders against Jewish people in what was called Palestine before 1948, murdered before there was a state. So if you really study this, you look at the claim. First of all, the historic claims, even in the Quran, are undeniable, and Muslims who are honest are willing to say that it's the Jewish people's land, Israel, or Greater Israel's land. But the hatred just keeps going up, and it goes beyond any kind of logic. And we have to see that. And that's why people are willing, like this person who did this attack, he sprayed gasoline on himself. He was willing to die while lighting elderly people on fire, claiming it was because they're Zionists. They were trying to get the hostages back. It wasn't even a pro-Israel thing. It was awareness about the Israeli hostages that were over there. But he was willing to die for this, and to kill for this, to light 80-something-year-old Jewish women on fire for a hatred. Where in the world does that come from?
Well, I think that it comes from a lot of people in the Middle East. They're brought up to hate Jews when they're from Palestine or particular areas. I had a friend who shared this with me. He was a Palestinian Christian, And he says, my family used to teach me so much about Jews, and they hated Jews, but that's because of their views on Zionism. That's a lot of it and where it comes from. So it's all connected, and I do believe it's all viewed as one thing, but yet people try to separate it. And the Torah teaches the opposite of the hate that these communities are promoting. And that's why we hear this from the river to the sea. It's a chant of no peace. Free Palestine. I mean, what this guy was screaming, I can't tell you how many times I've heard that at these protests we go out to. Every single protest.
Yeah, so talk about how that's manifesting here. It's really within, the college students are romanticizing this and are being pro-terrorist, pro-Hamas. The transgender community that wouldn't last 5 seconds in Gaza, a man dressed as a woman, claiming that, and yet they side with that. You've been called, racial, anti-Semitic slurs, and had people physically come after you. Talk about how you're seeing it manifest within, well, we would say those who are influenced by Marxism here in our local, I mean, we're talking Colorado Springs.
Absolutely. So I do believe that there is this crossover with this Marxism. We could talk about the war against quote unquote capitalism, or what they call the Zionist entity. And what I've seen is they are viewing America and Israel as one entity, which is the Zionist entity.
And the oppressors.
And the oppressors, correct. And, what we've seen over the past few years at Pikes Peak Pride, this intersectionality I was talking about, the first year I was concerned, they were telling the community to riot for their rights. And that when
we say Pikes Peak Pride, we're talking about this convention, outside convention and parade that happens and is happening this June.
Right, correct. So I went to some leaders, and I went to Pikes Peak Pride and spoke with them about that. This past year, they did not march with that message. This was the Democratic Socialists of America who had marched with this message. So this year, the Democratic Socialists of America marched with the message of Queers for Palestine.
That was last year.
Last year. Proposed. Yes. Last year
was Queers for Palestine. That was the theme that the Social Democrats wanted to march in the Pride Parade.
Correct. And we got this year's coming up still. So we'll see what they march with this year.
And we found that going down, and we mentioned this, we did whole shows on it, that when we went down to Pikes Peak Pride and lots of booze, we're wondering, as the culture has shifted under the new federal administration, whether as many corporations are going to be funding this. That's going to be a question because it's not as hip, it's not as popular now, but we'll see whether they double down on this. But we found down there the Democratic Socialists and the Church of Satan had booths down there, and we're like, why are you part of this? And what we realize is that Marxism infuses any movement, so that when you can say, why is socialism good for America? They say, hey, you're a racist, you're a transphobe, or whatever. It's like, no, I want to know politically why, and then eventually they say F you and they tell you to get lost. They have no answers. Right,
like at the Steve Bannon protest that we were covering, they were screaming, no more Nazis or something like that. And, I was like shaking my head. Yeah, we don't want Nazis. And then they turned it on me because they heard I was a Jewish man, and they started chasing after me, and like they're calling me a Nazi. So how do we get to this point where they're calling Jewish people Nazis? That's where we're at.
And I would just say, lastly, we need to support the Jewish community. As in the last segment, Jeremy Jacobs said, the Jewish community is looking for the non-Jewish community for support, and please step up. But I will say this: so much of the Jewish community is so liberal, and they keep supporting politicians. They support organizations that hate us, that work against us. And so we have to wake up. I'm not saying you have to, change completely, maybe be a moderate, but stop funding the very people that want to destroy us. That is suicide. And so this is also a call to the Jewish people. It's a call to everyone to wake up. Anti-Semitism is here, folks, and this is getting dangerous. Will you remain silent? Will you take action? That's what we'll be talking about in the next segment.
I'm glad you got to bring that up. That's good.
Okay, so we have, I need to know how long the rant is. How long is the rant? 2:23. Okay, thank you. Okay, so we just have 5 minutes for this. So I'm going to deal with the anti-Zionist versus anti-Semitic. Why don't you make a statement like 1 minute to the press to be more careful. Like this thing that they just did of printing what the AP put out that supposedly did you read that? Mm-mm. Supposedly they brought US aid in, they were going to hand it out, and there was a claim that Israel just shot people that were receiving aid or heading to receive aid. And that killed 23 people. But the people who were distributing the aid said, we heard no gunshots. It seemed really weird. Like Israel's actually going to fire on people that are going to get aid. That seems really weird. What's more likely, we don't know, is that these people actually successfully got aid, which they didn't get under Hamas because they would steal it first and then sell it back to the people. That these people were probably leaving with their aid and they were killed to have it taken from them for going to it. That seems more probable, but just the fact that it went out on the AP and everyone, local, national, put it on their websites, picked it up, even though the stats were coming out of the Gaza Health Ministry, which we know not. So just do about a minute of a call to the press to do better and recognize that things are turning violent around this information, and they need to fact check better. In fact, the Washington Post yesterday made a formal retraction that they should have looked into this better. Then government officials, I'll thank them.
Who did it?
Washington Post did that, but I saw it and I was going to call Fox 21. I saw it on their website. They have it on they just had it there. I was like, this is weird. I don't think this is true. And it's probably still up there, but we'll see. Government officials, thank them for their statements, but what are we going to do with actual policy? Why don't you talk about the church and the church speaking out? And then I'll just talk about individuals. But we have to keep it quick. We're only going to have about 45 seconds for each thing because we have to be out in 5 minutes. Okay. So I'll end up giving you signals to when we have to end the segment. So I'll probably give you a 2 minute and a 1 minute for that. Okay.
Gotcha.
Welcome back to the Peak News on AM 1460, FM 101.1. The Answer. It's Faith and Family Wednesday, and Chaim Goldman. I'm here with investigative journalist Jordan Baldwin. We are both Jewish individuals, but we're journalists, and so we're doing what we can with our voice, and we ask, what will you do with yours? Will you remain silent like happened in Germany when these things were ramping up, like happens all over the world? There's that famous saying whether it's true or not, it may be more of a fable of it, but, I can see that it's true that while the cattle cars were heading to the death camps and going by villages with churches, the pastors would say, sing louder, because the Jews were crying out for help. We've learned as a people that most likely we're not going to get help from anybody, that we're on our own. That's why it's so important, the state of Israel, but it shouldn't be like that, especially amongst the church. So will you remain silent, or will you take action? And I would call you, what can you do? Well, you can speak out like we're doing to people. You can have these conversations. You can shut down when people start to get anti-Semitic, start talking to them about it. And something you really can do is do not equate, this thing where equate Zionism and the anti-Zionism, anti-Semitism, same thing. Stop believing that they are different things. They're being used in the same way to speak out in a way, hatred against Jewish people in a way that's politically and socially acceptable. Jordan, talk about how the responsibility of the press here.
Yeah, so we've seen these reports that have come out really quick about Israel shooting people providing aid, and then the official retraction from the Washington Post, people condemning Israel instead of Hamas on the October 7th attacks for the response. Just this rhetoric that we see is spreading like wildfire. It's evil, and the media, a lot of media, seem to be playing into it. So it's time to be intellectually honest as media. It's time to confront our own biases and support the truth, because there is a truth to this, and a lot of people don't want to face it. So I think as far as government officials go, we saw the press conference And we saw Governor Polis talking about how a little bit of light can overcome the darkness. And he prays that we are radiating light. You know, when God does a work, it's usually when people are humbled. And I really think that there's an opportunity to turn this around for this country. We heard Rabbi Mark Soloway talk about we've seen this coming. And I believe we have seen this coming. And he also said it's time. They also said that day today at the press conference, it's time for faith leaders to take action. And I want to put a call out for all the faith leaders to take action, stand up. We can still honor free speech and stand against this hate.
Yeah, it's really scary how pretty much basically silent after October 7th the church is here. Maybe there was a mention once or twice, I'm not saying to the pastor, but overall silence on this, and the Jewish community is watching. And, you know, what are we going to do? I thank the government officials. We read statements from the mayor's office, city council, county commissioners. Statements are great. They're awesome. They're elected officials here, and words mean something, and spiritually too. But what about policy? And what about actual events and standing up, not to just do things behind the scenes to support the Jewish community, but to do things publicly and to come out day after day saying, not in our town. And that's what we really need to do. The press needs to do that. Government officials, the church, and you as an individual. Again, what can you do? Do you know Jewish people? Speak to your neighbors. Do that. Even speak to Christian neighbors. Talk about this. Why is this happening? Why are people either, willing to be so vocal about this now, like it doesn't mean anything, or just be silent, be complicit? Why are you willing to do that? Check your own spirit on that, because here's the deal. We always know it's going to turn to violence. People say it's just words, but now it is turning to violence. A bunch of Jewish people were lit on fire the other day in Boulder by someone who was living in Colorado Springs. Remember that all that has to happen for evil to prevail is for good men and women to do nothing. And you know what? I'm not talking about solving this around the world. I'm talking about solving it in our town. Jordan Baldwin, thank you so much for being on The Peak today and talking about this.
Thanks for having me. It was a great opportunity.
Please stand up, folks. We're not doing this just because we're Jewish, but you know what? We're like canary in the coal mine. We sense this a little bit more than others. We sense it quicker. And we want to say this has happened to us throughout history. Let's not have it happen again. Now, Jim Miller and the Peak Rants, and Jim is ranting about labeling hate where there is no hate.
It's a good one. That was a good one.
I have to be reminded to punch this or it doesn't go out on the live stream. So I missed the first half of it. James is supposed to remind me, or else our live stream has gaps in audio.
But that was just the live, right? Just
It's whatever comes over the phones or over recording. If I don't punch this up, then it doesn't go to the live stream.
and the phones and the recordings are hooked to one button.
Well, we're actually playing.
Oh.
We're playing the feed into microphones, so I have to open those microphones.
Okay.
It's real clunky workaround, and we keep forgetting. And I can't let the copyrighted music go over the live stream or it could blow the algorithm, so I can't just have it on. So I have to, at some point after the music stops playing, remember to do it. But the tech is supposed to remind me, and they're not. And so I'm not remembering, and then because I'm sort of occupied once the music stops playing, I'm sort of busy.
You see how they put the music up to my live stream every time I go out? Try to. It's like, oh,
Okay.
yeah, I get that, man.
Okay. So, we'll. So you're coming back tomorrow.
Yeah, tomorrow will be a good one. That's really
So
that's great.
design the show like you know how to do segments 2, 3, 4, and 5, headlines, commentary, interview, commentary. Decide how you want to break things up, how you want to tie it together. Just if you could design the show for tomorrow,
Yeah, absolutely.
and then get that to me by
Tonight
or by
tomorrow.
tomorrow by like 1.
Okay.
And that way I can slam it into the script. But you've
I'll stay with
1
the
minute.
template though. Just if
Yeah,
I don't
use the
it,
template. I mean,
or
do the
just use one.
timings. Yeah, and design the show primarily because we're going to, let's go into the hate crime hoax stuff because we haven't had you on to really report what you saw and everything. Then do Pride Month. And then the final segment could be like, how are these interrelated?
Okay.
So we could spend the headline segment we could spend segment 2 and 3. That's about 15 minutes on the hate crime hoax. Then we could spend 12 minutes on Pride and all the interrelated stuff with Pride. And then we could do a bringing them together kind of thing, why we're covering this.
I like that. That sounds like a great show, and that'll be a nice flow too.
And I'll tell you once we're off air about some connections. Okay, we're back. Thank you for joining us for another episode of The Peak. Heavy topic, really important. Wish we didn't need to talk about it at all. Again, seemed to me when I was growing up, there really wasn't, this anti-Semitism. I'm not saying there weren't racists. There weren't people that would say stuff. But actually now we're getting into the mobocracy. This is where it really gets dangerous, when large groups of people keep coming together to shout slogans that are violent against a people group. And it shouldn't be anybody. But you know what? Eternally, it's the Jewish people. But remember, and this is within Islam, first they come for the Saturday people and then the Sunday people. This doesn't stop with us as being Jewish. And so let's stop it together now. We're always on the front. Couldn't you choose someone else? Some of the time, as Tevye said in Fiddler on the Roof, being the chosen people. That's okay. That's our role to play. What I would ask America, what I would ask Colorado Springs more directly, can we solve this together before it gets bad? Can we speak out about it when it's happening on the college campuses, when it's happening in the city council, when people are doing this? Can we speak out against it and make it socially unacceptable? It's only because it's socially acceptable that it's coming out so much at this time since October 7th. Well, Jordan Baldwin's going to be back on the program tomorrow, returning to report on stories we're investigating, including a deeper dive into the hate crime hoax case, now that the trial of the perpetrators is over, and it's Pride Month. So we're going to be talking about that, events that are going on, and what that really means for the city. It's not so innocent. And amazingly, these stories are all tied together. Well, stick around for the Larry Elder Show coming up next here on The Answer. And check out our 250 podcast. Yes, 250 on thepeak.news. The Peak We say the quiet stuff out loud, just like we did today. And with your help as a citizen journalist, as an intern, as a sponsor, as a guest, as someone who just tells people about us, we're saying it louder and louder every day for such a time as this. Thank you, Pikes Peak Region. Watchmen out. Shalom.
Was good.
Was it?
Yeah, it was. It really generally hit on a lot.